Hello children. So let us proceed our chapter, our environment. In the previous environment we have learned that what is the concept of ecosystem, how it runs, what are the essential parts or components of any ecosystem, and what are their respective roles in any ecosystem. So today we are starting a new topic, food chains. So first have a look at this situation. For example, in any forest, if we start from the grasses, then small leaf-eating insects like grasshoppers will be eating the grass. And in turn, some insectivorous bird or frog will eat these small insects. And then predator birds can also consume these insectivorous or small birds. So we can see that there is a series that is formed by the feeding relationship between the organisms. So they all are independent organisms, but they are related to each other. They depend on each other for their nutritional requirements. And why? Because by the oxidation of all the nutrition that we obtain, we get energy. And to do any work in the world, whether it is a living system, non-living system, we require energy. So a chain kind of series is formed, and this series is made up of organisms which depend on each other for food, and that is the food chain. Here it is important to mention that this food chain is showing the interrelationship or the interaction between the biotic components, but it has been started by the interaction between abiotic component of the ecosystem and biotic component. Only producers or the green plants which can utilize and fix the sunlight and form something like glucose or starch, then a food chain starts. So let us learn more about it. What is a food chain? So food chain is a chain of different kind of organisms which have a relationship of eating some organism and being eaten by the other one. Now, what else? Food chain is a series of organisms feeding on one another to fulfill their energy requirement. It is not just for fun, it is for their energy requirement. So, food chain results due to the interactions among components of the ecosystem, as we have just seen, through which energy flows in the system. This point is very important, children, because this is happening to make the flow of energy possible, and without the energy no system can sustain. So it is important to note that these interactions are nutrition based. So organisms associated to each other through a food chain fulfill their nutritional requirement by eating each other. Now let us learn some more attributes of this. So here we are seeing that this is a forest food chain. So some herbivorous animals will be feeding upon the green plants, and they will be eaten by some carnivorous animal. Here, if we start from a grassland, then small insects will be eating the leaves of the grass, and they might be eaten by the frog, which will be eaten by the snake, and snake will be eaten by the eagle. If we talk about the aquatic ecosystem, then small hydrophytic plants or algae will be eaten by small arthropods, which will be taken up by the fish, and fish will be ultimately eaten by the crane. So there are many food chains visible in this picture. Now, there are some very important attributes of the food chain, like what is the purpose. So, any system requires energy to sustain itself. Yes, that is true. So how and from where we are going to get that energy? Energy flows in an ecosystem through the food chains. So whatever energy of the sunlight has been fixed by the green plants will now be available to other organisms when they consume these green plants, and that is how the energy is going to flow. So remember children, notice the direction of the arrow. The direction of the arrow shows the direction of the flow of energy. Now you can also see that the levels of various organisms are different. Do they have any significance? Yes, they do. So let us understand about this. So various steps of food chain at which transfer of matter and energy takes place are known as trophic levels. So at each step the organisms are present, and what are they here for? For the nutritional need of some other organism. So these are actually trophic or feeding levels that we are seeing in a food chain. And the first trophic level, remember, very important point, the first trophic level will always be occupied by the producers, because obviously unless the producers are producing something, unless the producers are trapping and fixing the sunlight energy, how else the energy will start flowing into the system? So we need producers to produce some biomass which can then be consumed by different consumers. Now second trophic level. Second trophic level is obviously going to be occupied by herbivorous organisms. So deer will directly feed upon the producers. Insects directly feed upon the producers. Small arthropods in a pond ecosystem will also feed upon the producers. So second trophic level, always herbivores or primary consumers. Third trophic level. Now third trophic level is occupied by those organisms which consume the primary consumers. So they are, whether it is the fish, whether it is the frog or the lion, the third trophic level is occupied by secondary consumers which are exclusively flesh eaters. So they will be eating other animals, they will not directly feed upon the plants. And then there is fourth trophic level. Fourth trophic level organisms are those which consume the secondary consumer, and that is why they themselves are tertiary consumers. And in some rare food chains, we also witness a fifth trophic level. Why am I saying that this level is very rare? Is something we will discuss shortly in the forthcoming slides. So remember children, various steps of the food chain are known as trophic levels. These trophic levels exist because energy needs to be transferred from one organism to the next organism, and the various levels which are occupied are to be occupied by the producers first, then the consumers, which can be categorized into primary, secondary and tertiary consumers. So let us move ahead. So it is all about the energy, and you know that the energy, abundant energy of the sunlight is trapped by the producers or the chlorophyll containing organisms, and then it is made available to the other organisms. But you know, sun provides us with so much energy. So how much of that energy is utilized by the producers? Is it 100%? Or how much is it really? Now we are going to understand. So this is where we discuss the flow of energy in an ecosystem. So when sun radiation is falling on earth, the green plants can utilize only 1% of that entire available nutrition. Now suppose whatever that 1% was, producers have utilized it and formed some biomass, some glucose through photosynthesis. And out of all that uh, biomass that they have produced, they are not going to offer all of it to the primary consumer, because they have made this food to take care of their own energy requirement. So they will also do respiration, they will also grow, they will also perform various metabolic activities into which the energy is going to be consumed. So when primary consumers eat producers, then how much energy do they get? So remember, 90% of the total available energy will be lost as heat, as in various metabolic activities of that trophic level organism. Only 10% will be available to the primary consumer. Now, once any secondary consumer eats a primary consumer, how much energy reaches there? The same phenomena happens. 90% of the energy will be lost as heat and in various metabolic activities of the organisms of this second trophic level, and only 10% will be available for secondary consumers. Similarly, it happens at the fourth trophic level and so on. So remember children, as a general rule, 90% of energy is something that is inevitably lost at each trophic level, and only 10%, which is stored in the biomass, is made available to the next trophic level. So you can see, suppose we had started with X amount of energy, then this level will obtain point X, this level will obtain 0.01x, this level will obtain 0.001x, and the amount of energy is continuously decreasing at each trophic level. So what happens after the fourth trophic level, where the tertiary consumer is sitting? After the fourth trophic level, the amount of available energy will be so less so that it cannot support any more trophic levels beyond this. And that is why I had said that a food chain consisting of 5 trophic levels is very rare, and in nature generally food chains of length 3 to 4 trophic levels exist because of this energy limitation. And this phenomena was studied, analyzed, and then concluded by a famous scientist, Lindemann, and it is also known as the 10% law of energy transfer given by Lindemann. One more very important point, the flow of energy in an ecosystem is unidirectional. So it will always be from lower trophic level towards the higher trophic level. The energy can never revert back. Remember this general rule, that the flow of energy is unidirectional and it follows the 10% law. So let us move ahead and learn some more attributes of the ecosystem. Let us have a look at a real forest situation. So here you are observing various food chains. Okay, this one is an aquatic one, but it is actually culminating into the terrestrial carnivore. That's why this one has also been shown. But regardless of that, if this is a forest, then not a single food chain will operate over there. The single food chain was studied just to make the idea of energy flow clearer. But here, a general forest will have large trees, small grasses which bear small seeds, and shrubs and flowering plants. So many different varieties of producers will be present. Now, suppose we are starting with this one. So, this producer has many consumers, a small rodent like rat, rabbits, and small mammals like goats and antelopes. And this primary consumer again is a prey for many predators. For example, this mongoose, this snake, this owl, all can consume a small rat. Similar for the rabbit also. And if we go to higher trophic level also, then here this one, frog, can be consumed by the snake as well as by the crane. So you can see children that each organism at each trophic level is both a prey for many predators and is a predator for a variety of lower trophic level organisms. And this gives rise to multiple food chains operating in a system. And these food chains are not completely independent also, because of the animals which fall in more than one food chains. These food chains are interlinked, and that is how the presence of multiple interlinked food chains forms a food web. It is a web-like situation. So let us summarize what we have learned from this slide. A food web. Each organism is generally eaten by two or more other kinds of organisms, which in turn are eaten by several other organisms. So instead of a straight line food chain, the relationship is shown as a series of branching lines or interlinked food chains, and this is known as food web. Many interlinked food chains in an ecosystem give rise to a food web. This is the simpler way to explain about the food web. And what is the importance of food web? So, food web increases the stability of ecosystem. Now, this is a very important point. Let us emphasize more on this. So, suppose had there been a single food chain running, and if any organism at any given trophic level disappeared due to some endemic disease, due to overhunting, or any other reason, then it will affect the entire food chain. What will be the effects? Suppose the primary consumers are missing from a food chain. So its immediate effect will be that all the consumer levels above this, secondary, tertiary, they will die. Their population will be very much reduced because they cannot find their food now. And what will happen to the lower trophic level? Since there are no animals to graze on these particular kinds of producers, their population will increase dramatically, which will ultimately lead to the competition of essential abiotic resources among them as well. So, the disappearance of any organism at any level in a food chain can be very catastrophic or destructive for the food chain and ultimately to the ecosystem. But if organisms have more than one food options available, then if that particular organism is not available, they can feed upon something else. And that is why the presence of multiple food chains are very important. And multiple food chains form food web, so we can conclude or we can infer that food webs make an ecosystem more stable. This also brings our attention to the important point that due to human activities and greed, many organisms have gone extinct. And once a, an organism goes extinct, you can understand the drastic effects it leaves on an ecosystem. So, we must be more responsible and less greedy in our actions, because this earth is not just for us. Now, children, let us understand about a very significant topic, biological magnification. So, what is this biological magnification? For this, you must understand few basic concepts, that how our bodies are made up. So, whatever molecules are there are of biological origin, like carbohydrates, amino acids, fatty acids, and nucleic acids like DNA, RNA. And biological origin molecules are obtained whenever we feed upon other organisms. And you remember that all the organisms in a food chain are related to each other only to fulfill their nutritional demands. But what will happen if some molecule which is non-biological, non-degradable enters the food chain and starts becoming part of our body? Then biological magnification happens. Now let us understand it in few steps. So harmful chemicals like pesticides, heavy metals, etc. enter our bodies through the food chain. But then how do they find their entry in the food chain? That will be possible from the first trophic level only. So these molecules enter the food chain through producers. How? Whenever producers are absorbing water and minerals to perform photosynthesis. And if their surroundings are polluted with these metals, pesticides, etc., they will also become a part of the producer or the plant body. Now, suppose primary consumer is eating them up. What will we observe? That these chemicals are only accumulated. They will be accumulated in the producer body, they will be accumulated in the primary consumer body, because they are not degradable. They are of non-biological origin, so the body is not going to utilize it, it is only going to accumulate it. And this accumulation pattern increases at each trophic level. So the primary consumer will show more concentration of them as compared to the producer. The secondary consumer will show higher concentration as compared to the primary consumer, and so on. So the top consumer, obviously being at the highest trophic level, accumulates their highest concentration as well. And this increasing magnification of these harmful substances as we go up each trophic level is known as biological magnification. And its classic examples are that DDT accumulation in birds, which was causing egg fragility. So how did it end up in bird bodies? Because the DDT used extensively in the agriculture sector was accumulating in the soil, and the worms and insects present in that soil were eaten by the birds, and therefore their concentration increased many-fold in the bird body, and it was not utilized by the body. It was causing egg fragility in these birds, so they suffered severe population loss. Similarly, if untreated waste from the factories is released in the local water bodies, if it contains mercury, then from the aquatic plants and through small insects, through fish, and ultimately human beings at the topmost position of any food chain, when they consume those fish, mercury concentration was found to be maximum in the tissue of human beings, and its accumulation causes a severe neurological disorder known as Minamata disease. So one more point that I want to emphasize is that human beings are the generator or the cause of these kind of molecules, and human beings are those organisms which will be accumulating the maximum amount of these chemicals, because we occupy the topmost position of almost any food chain. So it is high time that we should start thinking and behaving responsibly. So with this, we have finished a major part of this chapter, our environment, and in the next lecture, I will be discussing that how human activities are impacting our environment. So please revise till this topic and come prepared in the next class. Thank you.